Hi, everybody. How are you guys doing today? That's good. That's good. My name is Layla, but my full name is Laylis Abubakar Mukhtar, and I'm here today to tell you guys a little bit about my story. But before I begin, um, there are some trigger warnings. My story includes forcible institutionalization, abuse and neglect, substance abuse, homelessness, and self-harm. So please feel free to step out of the room if you need to, and I'll try to do the same. I am 18 years old and a Seattle local. I was born in the south end of Seattle at Valley Medical Center, and my parents went to Garfield and Kent Meridian High School. My grandparents are from a little region in Ethiopia, the Oromo region, and they had to flee the war there, so they became refugees. And their first year together was spent in a refugee camp in Somalia, where my dad was born. But Somalia wasn't as safe either, so my grandparents found their way to the States. Life was good in the beginning. I loved being a kid. Running around the yard with my cousins at family gatherings and barbecues, we were all very close and would get together often as a family. Things were pretty great. In kindergarten, I started to notice things changing. I began to feel tension in the house between my parents. My dad stopped coming home regularly and would disappear for periods of time, and my mom started bringing other men home. So one day, around third grade, I came home from school to find the house and the car packed up. And I remember the car was this sad little gold Nissan Maxima. And I thought personally we were going to Disneyland. And I was so excited, and I got in the car with no questions. But then I realized as we were driving for hours and hours that my mom just kept crying, and we kept driving. And at that point I realized it was not a good trip. We drove all the way to Minnesota and spent the first year in a shelter called Mary's Place until we got our own one-bedroom apartment. And my sister and I would stay in the bedroom while there were always people over partying and whatnot in the living room. And in the mornings, I would venture out to the living room, open the blinds just a little bit while stumbling over all the drunk, passed out people on the floor, make myself breakfast, get what I needed, and then leave for school with my little sister while my mom was passed out with her friends. My school was a Montessori school. I was the only black kid there, black girl, and I was not used to being in a white space, and it showed. And I got bullied and beaten up all the time, and I would cry most days. And I remember having to run across the courtyard with my sister after school as kids chased us all the way to our apartment door. The bullying was relentless. I even joined the GSA, the Gay Straight Alliance, to escape from it. And the kids in the club knew I wasn't gay, but they still embraced me because they knew I needed some sort of safety. And they understood that, and they protected me. That was life. I was in a dark place pretty much every day, which became my normal. I felt so much anger and resentment, but I didn't know how to process those feelings or have anyone to confide in, so I just took it out on myself. I was a shell. One day in about 7th grade, my counselor called me to her office and started asking me how I was doing, and no one ever stopped me to ask me how I was doing. It took some time, but after a while, I finally unloaded and let it all out. My mom's absence, the partying, the strangers, the constant smell of alcohol, having to make sure my little sister was okay through it all. Later that day, I got a call back to her office and found a man from CPS waiting there for me. And he said he was there, he said he worked with kids and asked me if I wanted to go get ice cream. And my sister was already waiting in the car. So I got in and wondered if we were being kidnapped as we kept driving past all the ice cream shops. And we finally did stop for some froyo, and we went to a nearby foster home where we were told that we would probably never go back home. After a few months at that foster home, I was sent to my first psych facility because my foster mom was worried I was suicidal. And I didn't want to return to my foster home, and there were no other homes available for me, so I was sent to Girard Academy in Austin, Minnesota. When I first got to Girard, I broke down completely. All of the weight that I've been carrying came crashing down, and I let it unravel. Around 6 months in at Girard, I received a call that my mom had relinquished her parental rights to me and my sister, and I was officially a ward of the state, and no one wanted me. I was alone and unwanted at 13 years old. After I heard about my mom relinquishing her parental rights, I crashed into a deep depression. I wouldn't leave my bed. I had to be physically restrained for several days. At one point, I was so desperate to feel something that I began scratching myself and hurting myself, and I scratched myself so badly that I needed to be put in a safety smock, and I felt that it was all my fault that my mom didn't want me. But looking back now, I can see that was just a way to cope with the pain and the fear that I was feeling. I'd been at Girard for nearly 3 years when my father finally got custody of me and my sister, and he moved us back to Seattle to live with him. And life was good for a while again. And I started high school for the first time, and then COVID hit. And I felt like I was locked up all over again, and I went to it in a very deep depressive episode, and I didn't leave my house for the majority of COVID. And I had been on a very heavy cocktail of prescription medication since I was about 12 years old. I was on benzos, antipsychotics, antidepressants, anti-anxiety, and opioids. And I didn't want to live that way anymore, so I made a plan to leave myself off of, and I was able to. So I felt so clear. Whew. I felt so clear for the first time in years, but before long, all the emotions and the pain that the medications had been covering up came welling back. So I began to turn to drugs and alcohol to cope with most things, and I started hanging out with those types of people. Things with my dad were never in a good place. I had no reason to trust him. He had left me for 9 years, and then suddenly appeared out of nowhere trying to be my father again. And I just couldn't trust someone like that. So we fought all the time, and it finally came to a point where one night I threw my things in a bag and I didn't look behind me. I stayed at my friend's place for a while, and before a couple of weeks I began looking for shelters. And it turned out that YouthCare's South Seattle Youth Center was about 10 minutes away from where I was staying. So I headed over there. And I was so nervous when I first got to South Seattle, oh my God. But they had a bed ready for me, and they welcomed me with open arms, and I met some of the most wholesome staff there. I met Ray. She was my favorite. She was the happy one. She challenged me to level up, and I took that advice to heart every day. She encouraged me to save money and prepare for the future so that I could move out of the shelter and onto something more stable. Marla was like a mom to me. Oh, she helped me keep my head level when I was upset. We'd have lunch dates every day and go painting and get clean socks. And Marla kept it so real, and it was so hard to find someone like that in my life because people will say they'll help you, but Marla did everything she could to act on that. And Corey, a newer staff, was a go-getter. She would say, let's get this done today and don't let things sit because they'll end up sitting for a long time. And she encouraged me to think about my goals and where I wanted to go in life. Ray gave me the emotional motivation, Marla gave me the mental motivation, and Corey just felt like an older sister. They asked me every day, what do you need to move forward? After a couple of months, I was ready to move on from the shelter. Marla helped me get into Catalyst, one of YouthCare's transitional community homes. And when I first got there, I did not like nor trust the staff. And I did not talk to anyone for about the first couple of weeks. But over time, I began to see that they were genuinely trying to help me. And I especially connected with Tammy at Catalyst, and I could tell her anything, and she wasn't going to judge me. She is the most unjudgmental person I've ever met. She's so easy to talk to, but she will also stay in your business and will try to stay on your case. And Tammy has a life experience to get things done and understand where you're coming from with them. She kept me accountable, and she still does today. Tammy was the one who confronted me about my substance use. I would come home so shit-faced. I couldn't even look her in the eye. So she would bang on my door just to check on me. She would make me promise to meet with Johnny Oda, the drug and alcohol counselor, and I did not like him either. At all. And I told him I didn't have an addiction or a problem. So he said, okay, if you don't have a problem, then just stop doing whatever you're doing for 30 days. And I said, whatever, sure, like go away. And then ended up calling him about 3 days later. So at Catalyst, the staff helped me get my driver's license, a copy of my social security card, get a new job. They helped me set up with an apartment to move into. But most importantly, they helped me understand that staying clean and doing what I needed to do was the most important thing I could do to build the life that I choose for myself. So I chose to move into a clean house so that when I do move on to my own place, my foundation will be strong and grounded, and I'll be free to rise with my dreams. And I have so many dreams. The world is such a big place to me, and I want to see all the wonders in it. I want to see the dusty pyramids of Egypt and the rainy streets of London, and I want to hear the Hawaiian ocean roar and feel the sunburned sand on my skin. I want to give back and help people because of all the ways I have been helped, but all the ways I also wasn't helped. Because sometimes I think about becoming an EMT, but whatever it is I choose in this life, it will be the purpose and the meaning I choose for myself, the dream I dream for myself. And I'm grateful for all of the people that I've met at YouthCare who've shown me that I can have faith in life and that I can still have faith in myself. Because sometimes that faith still struggles, but as long as it's struggling, it's still fighting, and so will I. Thank you.